All right, so where we are in Maya 2011, I'm going to go ahead and open up the shot 2 tracking. We're going to start with the moving shot first before we even bother moving over to the whip pan tripod shot. So if I go ahead and kind of move through here, you can see that the image updates, but already we have a clipping plane problem. We have our camera, which is right here. We have our image plane. And we can see right now our image plane is set up at 340 frames. That's the max. That's why I chose this to open up this file, is because this file, while open, is the largest, longest file as opposed to the first file, which is a little bit shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and just come in here and show you that, as you can see in the render settings, everything is properly set up. We have in here the HD 1080, so forth. If I look through the actual camera here, I can hit View, Select Camera, and if I come down to the display options, there's a little thing here called Overscan. And if I tap in here to get the blinking cursor, hold down Control and left mouse drag, I can pull this out a little bit so I can get more of a view here. And as you can see, always make sure that your resolution gate is on, which I have on right now. So the first thing again is this clipping plane problem. I'm going to go ahead and say View, Select Camera, and come up here to the far and near clipping plane, set this to 1, set this to some ridiculous number. Right now I've got this at about 1,000,000, I believe. So as you can see, we kind of cruise through the shot. The camera is so small, and as you can see here, here's the grid. And as you can see as we go through here, here's all the keys. Now we don't want to affect any of these keys, so in order to do that, I want to just simply select the camera. So we'll go ahead and look through the camera 1. And I'll go ahead and lock these. The other thing I want to do is actually change the name of this actual camera. So if I go into my outliner, you see what we have here is the SynthEyes group node, the camera, and the trackers, or what right now is considered locators. So I'm going to come in here and just call this camera _02, because this is going to be our second camera group here. And I'm going to go ahead and call this camera _2 group, and might as well rename these trackers, and we'll just call them camera _02 trackers. I like to use underscore, just keeps things nice, organized, and so forth. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look here. I'm going to put down a box really quick. So I'll go ahead and create a polygon cube, and I'll scale it up, and we might as well go into smooth shade mode here. And I'll take the pivot point by hitting Insert and using this snap to point and put it to the bottom here and hit Insert again. And with that kind of said and done, I'm going to actually snap it now, still with the snap to point tool, onto one of these little locators, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and jump into our camera view. Let's find a nice kind of point to go towards here. And I think this point right here is looking good. Actually, let's try this one right here. And so far, it looks like it's pretty lined up. It's lined up pretty well. And that just shows you the really good work that SynthEyes did as far as the orientation that we did. So let's kind of peruse through the shot like I did here. And I'll go ahead and duplicate this by hitting Control-D with it selected. But first, let me see if I can find another point. Here's another point right here. So I'll duplicate it with my snap to point on, holding down my middle mouse button. And I might scale this down a little bit, like so. Let's go all the way back here. See if we can find any trackable points at the beginning here. Any locators. So here's one right here. So I'll go ahead and duplicate that. And I'll kind of snap it there. And I usually like to turn wireframe on, shaded on. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get as many squares as possible in here, just so that we can kind of, at our very best, kind of see how the tracking's doing and so forth. So I'm going to leave that in, and any one time I want to make sure there's a square in here so I can start to judge the quality of the track. Now, we've already evaluated in SynthEyes, but just to be safe, the real lesson, the real way to make sure everything is looking good is to do it in Maya, and that's through a play blast. So I'm going to put a whole bunch of them in here, and I'll go ahead and do a play blast. So I'll just go to Windows, Play Blast, look at the options here. We want to make sure our scale is set all the way to 1. And by doing that, it'll give us a full print of the size here. We want to look into those tiny details. If we do this, it'll scale it down 50%, 20%. It'll look very blurry. So we just want to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Play Blast on that. It's going to go through and create a nice, quick Play Blast version of this. And as I sit here walking through and sitting through the actual Play Blast, I can take a look and see if these boxes, are they staying put for the most part? And it looks like they are. Now for scene or for stuff that's a little bit farther out in the distance here, you might see a little bit of drifting. Drifting occurs where you don't have tracks. So in other words, if you tracked this area over here with a lot of tracks in SynthEyes and you put a box out there, it'll match perfectly. But if you take that same box, move it up here, it's not going to work. But since we've tracked these areas here and not the background, anything within any area that we actually tracked is going to actually stick to the ground pretty well. So I'm just going to let this play through, and then I'll go ahead and just go ahead and stop video here and come back when we got a Play Blast. All right, so this right here is the tall tale sign of whether or not you have a good track, and it looks like we do have a good track. I have this set to loop on my QuickTime, and again, I'm just looking at the boxes, at the bottom of the boxes specifically, and seeing, are they staying put to where they should be? And they're really looking like they're there. Now, it looks a little unreal because there's no shadows under them, but as far as location-wise, they're doing very, very well. We might have to tweak the orientation a little bit, but as far as the track being a solid track, we have a really awesome track here. So I'm very happy with the results I have. Everything looks like it's properly solved. So let's go ahead and tweak out the orientation. Now the orientation can be off by kind of looking from the side view. You can kind of see from here. You can go to the front view. And all these points should lay on roughly along the X and Z plane. So as we can see, I think we did a pretty good job, but just in case, I'm going to go ahead and jump to my outliner here. I'm going to take these 4 cubes and I'm going to put them inside of my Camera 2 group node. And now I'm going to orientate the group node, again, not the camera node, but the group node. Very important, many people make this mistake. We are orientating a group that has in it an animated camera. So I'm going to take that group node and we'll go ahead and tweak it. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and tear off this real quick, like so, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my camera. Let's find this sort of shot here that looks a little bit off. And so you can see we can kind of adjust this like so. So it's orientated to the ground here. So I'll just jump over here, go to my front view. I don't see anything that I need to tweak. And just to show you what I mean by tweaking is if your camera was a little bit off, so I'll go ahead and kind of delete some of these because I don't need them anymore. But say that it kind of looked like this. Well, first I would orientate it correctly. In this case, I probably want to orientate it kind of straight on like that. I want this to be the path of where the harvester is going to go straight over our actor here. So it's going to be about right there. You have to, you might want to orientate it here or here or here and so forth. So once you've orientated it, the actual box itself, make sure it's within the camera group node. So we got to make sure it's in there. Now take the camera group node. Again, we have the group node selected. I'm going to show this just to make sure everybody understands. And I'm going to find that box. I have to really look for it. There it is. And I'm going to take the pivot point by hitting insert for the camera group node and hit snap to point and snap it over here. So this now is the pivot point for the group node. So the first things first is I want to move this closer towards the origin or the grid. So I'm going to take this and go to snap to graph, and I'm going to snap it like that. So it snaps right on the graph. So I know that the graph is the ground plane, like so. This is where I'm going to be creating a lot of pieces of geometry. I want to be in this general area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rotate tool now and go to my top view and kind of orientate it like that using the outer yellow circle. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do, since I like to have a Z forward, that's just a general computer gurus thing to have the Z forward be the motion. So we're kind of on the X axis, but I want to be on the Z axis. So in order to do that, I can just rotate this 90 degrees. And again, I can go to my top view again and kind of rotate it like that. Go to my side view, use this rotate to kind of make sure that looks good, front view, and then rotate it like this until it's perfectly correct. So nothing happened to the actual animation of the camera. It's just that we basically orientated this as is right now, so that if we create anything in here, Like for instance, if I get rid of this box and then just come in here and create a plane. So if I go create polygon plane, okay, I expand that out. It is now correctly orientated to the ground. So if I go ahead and hit X-ray like so, I can kind of pull through here, and this is what we get. Another thing we can do is just double check is to keep an eye on our tracking points. Let's go ahead and take our tracking points as far as the actual locators that we have here. So let's go ahead and grab those. And since they're so small in this scene, I'm going to grab all of them and use my scale tool and scale them up a little bit just so I can see them a little bit better. And here's where all the action is taking place. So it's up to us, but I'm going to keep everything far out here as possible. And I'm just going to scale this up and bring this out. So now I can start to see if there's any hills or valleys or if everything looks orientated correctly. And kind of coming to the side view, it looks like everything is pretty good. We got a few points here that are a little high, probably a hill there. And there's a little bit of looks like a little bit of a possible orientation. So I can take this hill if I wanted to go through my camera and say, okay, maybe, just maybe, this is orientated a little bit like that. So I can rotate it like that. So let's go ahead and just kind of take a look at the other points. As you can see, now by doing that rotation, we have an issue of points floating up in the air. So that's a little dangerous. So what I can do is I can kind of come in here and kind of bring this up a little bit and kind of do a mid-ground favor. So I'll kind of come in here, pull this up a little bit, maybe pull it down. Let's see. And I'm looking pretty happy with that. So again, I'm just going to make sure wireframe on shaded is on and just kind of come through here and see how everything looks. So kind of peruse through here. I want to make sure, again, these are absolute ground. So if I go to my side view here, or my front view, I want to make sure they're on that plane pretty much. And as you can see, they're not. They're not on that plane. So I need to take this plane with the proper rotation and maybe bring it up a little bit like that. Okay. So let's go ahead and look through our camera here. And it's still screaming a little bit of just a little touch of rotation. So I'm going to bring this down to something like 0.6. It's probably going to do good. I'll kind of come through the shot here and see how it looks. In fact, we should go ahead and just do a play blast and just see how this looks while we're at it. So I'll just go ahead and hit play blast and we'll come back. All right, so as you can see, this is looking really nice. I'm not so much looking at the actual locators. I'm looking actually at the ground plane. Does the ground plane match up? And again, this is looking very solid, well orientated, but now we have to orientate the actual group node. Although we fixed it with our little offset, we still need to fix it as far as being orientated to scene. So it looks fine in here, but if I look to my side view, we have a Dutch angle here on the ground plane. So in order to fix that, again, we do the same operation as we did before. I take this plane, middle mouse, drag it into the group node that it's in there now. Grab this actual camera group node, and if I want to, I can kind of put it anywhere really. So I'll just go ahead and hit insert key, hit snap to point, and maybe stick it to the middle right there. And just go to my side view. And with the group node selected, just start rotating this until it's solid. I'll go ahead and rotate it till it's roughly correct. This might be a little hard to do with such a small grabber, so you can hit your plus sign, minus sign, and make this a little bit bigger so you can kind of tweak out this more accurately. So I'll go ahead and back up a little bit here. Again, I'll go to my front view, and I'll go to my top view. Everything's looking good. So at this point, I can start bringing down with the minus key the size of my manipulator. Okay, so with that said, I can now go ahead and take these trackers and just say display, hide selection. And for the plane itself, I can leave it in there for now. I think I'll just leave it for now. I'll just have it in there. But if not, I can just delete it. And with that said, I can see that if I create a new plane, so I go create polygon plane again, and I'll go and look through the camera, that if I scale it up now, we are now properly orientated to the scene, as you can see. So the harvester, which is going to be going over our actor here, is definitely going to come right at him. So I'm pretty happy, again, with everything I've got here. This is going to be the general direction that the harvester is going to go right over our actor. and so forth. Now, before I do anything, I'm going to bring in the other camera as well, because there's two shots. There's shot 1 and shot 2. Before I do that, I want to go ahead and create one last cube here. And this will be to scale the two cameras together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this cube and turn off snap to point, and I'm going to bring it over to where the actor is. And then I'm going to grab the top of this face right here. I'm going to roughly bring that down. I'll just go ahead and bring it down right here, and I'll just bring it up about right there. Now I want to make sure I'm where I should be here, so I know that this edge is where the actor should be, so let's go ahead and take a look at our perspective here. And that's about where we're at. So with that said, I probably might want to take this and move it a little bit closer like that. Or just kind of move it back and forth and say, that's about right. I kind of just do a rough scale of this, not too crazy here, of the size of our actor. So again, I can take this cube and say actor from shot 2. And that'll be in our outliner right there. As far as the plane's concerned right now, we can just go ahead and get rid of that. And I'll take this and just put it in the group node for now, just so that it's there. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and say display, hide selection. So I went ahead and hid the camera. If I go to my perspective view now, I cannot see anything. And now we're going to go ahead and bring in the actual camera 1. Before we do that, I'm going to do File, Save Scene As, and we'll go ahead and call this as an MB file, scene build _1. All right, now we're going to bring in the first shot, which is right here, and I'm just going to drag it into the scene file here of scene build 1. And by doing that, I can kind of look into my cameras here, and now we have two cameras with almost the same name. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our outliner and name this one just like we named this one up here. So we'll go ahead and call this camera _1 group, and we'll call this camera 1. And it's going to just follow as we did here. And as you can see, we have a box that has been brought over from Syntheye, so we can just get rid of that. And right here we can call this camera _01 trackers. So at this point, I can go ahead, maybe middle mouse drag this down here so that we have a nice organization here of shot 1, camera 2, and camera 1. So again, camera 2 is hidden. So let's go ahead and look through camera 1. So if I hit view select camera, I want to go ahead and grab these right here and lock them. So I'm going to right click and say lock selected. As you can see, the group node is just what it is. Here's the trackers. And let's go ahead and hit view select camera and get our overscan set up properly. So I'm going to come over here to my overscan, tap in there, hold down control, left mouse drag, and pull it out just a little bit. Like so. All right. So we can already see that we have an orientation that's a little off. We're actually looking straight at Y direction here. So if I go ahead and go to my perspective view, I'm like, where's the camera at? It's up there. So what do we do about that? Well, the first thing we can do is we can grab our group node, which pivot point is now the origin, and we can go ahead and rotate that 90 degrees. So I'll go ahead and come in here and rotate to -90 on the X. And that's a rough start for now. As you can see, animation is still here, and we should see a break. Let's kind of back up a little bit. We should see a break about right at frame 142. All right. So at this point, we need to start orientating the scene just like we did with shot number 2. So I'm going to go ahead again and create a polygon cube. I'm going to scale it up in proportion to my scene. I'm going to take the pivot point of that, hit insert, and snap that to the bottom. And then I'm going to take this, and I can't really snap it to any of these points. If I go to my top view, let's go ahead and kind of take a look if you can see that at all. And I'll go ahead and select all of the trackers for shot 1. Let's go ahead and scale those up so you can see them a little better. All we get is a semicircle kind of detail. It'd be kind of pointless to kind of come in here and snap points to that. So what I usually like to do is put it somewhere in the middle ground. This is very hard to kind of orientate because you got to judge, because these are sort of infinite points. Some of them are not infinite points. There's a lot of guesswork that has to go on with this. So with the cube itself selected, first I'm going to go ahead and hit View Select Camera. We want to make sure that under our shape node, again, the clipping plane is set up right. So I'll set this up to some ridiculous number, like so. So I'll go ahead and probably bring this out a little bit, see where the camera's facing here. There we go. So somehow from this, we have to establish where the ground plane is at. So it's kind of hard to do. And I'd say our orientation is actually looking pretty spot on with that 90-degree change. This is looking accurate to the ground leveling out of the actor's footing, as you can see here as I move this back and forth. Besides, when you also move this around, you also want to make sure that you are definitely into the local mode. So if I double click here on my actual translation, I make sure I'm in object mode for translating this around. And just by grabbing the little handles, I can kind of move it around. So I'm going to inch this forward a little bit and move along with our actor here. Kind of do this. It's kind of tricky. Alrighty. So I know roughly that I'm kind of at the chest level of our actor. So it's almost like a guesswork as far as how this whole thing works out. So I'm going to just bring this out as far as I can, and I'm going to bring this down probably about as far as like right there. So that's sort of like my ground, so to speak. And just for the heck of it, I'll go ahead and just take these two right here, and in my perspective, I'm going to duplicate them across. This is a really quick, fun thing to do. Kind of come through here like so. And we can go in our camera 1. And we can kind of get an idea as far as a play blast here. Now, we're dealing with a different frame range here because we're dealing with a frame range of, I believe it is 142 is our frame range. Now, notice we can't get to 0 here because we're set to 1.1. That's because we set up inside of Synthesize what was proper. That's, again, we'd be off by 1 frame if we didn't do that. Make sure you start at frame 1, checker box. So at 142, I'm going to bring this to 142 for now. There we go. So my range is now from 1 to 142, like so. So right now it's overlapping with the footage of the second one. We're going to create an offset for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a play blast and take a look at what exactly we're dealing with here. So I'll go ahead and hit play blast. All right, and as you can see here in the play blast, we were right. There needs to be a rotation forward for the boxes and rotation to the right. So it kind of looks like they're kind of on a Dutch as well as facing inward on the wrong direction. But unfortunately, boxes aren't going to help me in this circumstance as they did before, because we have a really strange telephoto kind of background here. And I want to concentrate on the area where the actual harvester is going to be in this shot. And that is way out there. The harvester is going to be right over here somewhere. So we have to kind of start with what I like to say is just orientate everything with a simple plane. So what we'll do is we'll jump in here and I'll go ahead and create a just simple plane like we did before. And we already know for a fact that this square right here is the ground plane. So that's a good starting position. So I'll kind of come in here and bring this over and extend it out like so. And I think I'll also, for the heck of it, hit the insert key on this and put it to the very corner here like this. And hit insert again. And now I can just go ahead and snap that to what I know is the ground plane. So there's a lot of different ways to do this sort of kind of orientation. But it's such an important process of the whole thing because we really have to know where everything is at and that it looks right, it's orientated right, so I don't have to rotate everything every time we want to animate. Another issue we have here is my image plane is getting in the way of the territory where the harvester is going to be, so I want to get that pushed back. So in order to do that, I can actually grab the camera itself. So here's the camera. And if you go to the actual image plane tab, you will find on here something called the depth. And the depth, if I kind of tap in here and control and left mouse drag left and left and back forth here. You can see it goes back and forth. So I'm going to just type a number in here, like maybe 1500. As you can see, it starts to get further away. It does not affect in any way, shape, or form what you see through the camera. So if I put this to say 1600, nothing changes, as you can see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and extend this out. And I think that's about as far as I have to go. Let's just double check. Now you can already see that the issue that we have is we're sort of going down. If we were to put the harvester down on this scene, it would look really odd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my plus sign, bring up my rotations here, and I'm going to start orientating this according to where I'm going to put the CG object. So I got to be very careful when I do this. All right, probably too much. Again, this is a very flat scene, as you can see here. So with that said, let's go ahead and just delete all of these boxes. We don't need them anymore. We just use them basically for a rough check. And let's go ahead and hide those trackers. And just do a quick kind of fly through here and see how everything looks. And I don't think I'm going to need to do a play blast on this. I'm pretty confident in what I have here. Again, it'd probably be good to create a couple boxes. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the plane, middle mouse drag it into the actual camera group node. And then now all we have to do is with the group node selected, hit insert, snap to point. And again, we just snap to one edge of this right here. In this case, we probably want to orientate this a little bit differently. So I'm going to hit my insert key and put it somewhere where the actual harvester is going to be, which is probably going to be somewhere around this area. And I want that to be as close to the origin here as possible. So I'm going to take that instead, and I'm going to snap it to the graph. Come down to this little island of my grid here, and snap that to the center for now. And now I need to orientate the group node. So again, it's real simple. You kind of back off a little here. Using your rotates, again, use your minus and plus sign. I can just kind of straighten this out as much as possible here. And go to my top view. Looking good. Side view. And I'm pretty happy with this. So let's take a look. Not there completely yet. Let's take a gander and see what's going on here. There we go. Make sure this is orientated. So I just choose between the front, side, and top view and kind of orientate this as best as I possibly can. Alrighty. So in this case, now if I were to create, say, a polygon cube, and I'm going to bring that up, jump over here, and scale that puppy up, and might as well bring it up and set the insert for the pivot point at the bottom. And then we can snap that somewhere on the grid or in the image plane. So at this point, I can kind of pretend this is the harvester machine, roughly, so to speak. It gives me some dimensionality to this. If I want to, I can kind of scale some of these down. So now I can have a series of boxes out here, like so. For this ground plane here, if I want to, I can go ahead and delete this. And we can go ahead and kind of play it through, but I'm going to leave it on. And let's go ahead and do a very quick play blast here. So with this head, I'm going to go ahead and jump over here and just do a quick play blast. Okay, so let's take a look. And as we can kind of see here, everything looks properly orientated. And it's hard to tell really when we look at this, but I'm going to just come through here and kind of look at it and say, okay, does that look right? Does those look like they're on the ground properly? And in my opinion, I think they look perfectly fine. So with that said, we have some rough geometry here that we're going to keep in the scene. So I think I'm going to go ahead and delete a couple things. See if I can come around here. And I'll delete these things. I don't really need them. I know that this is sort of a cube. I'll put that into the group. There's the plane itself. And I just have those kind of tucked away inside of the group. The last thing I got to do is create that reference cube for the size of our actor so that we can scale between the two cameras. So I'm going to go ahead and create a polygon cube. Go in my perspective. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and with the pivot point as, oops, wrong cube. And again, change the pivot point to the bottom. I think it's always good to, if you're ever modeling with cubes, that you would get into doing this. Be nice. There was a hotkey in Maya for this. So we have the pivot point there, and now we can just snap it to the grid because we know the grid is the ground. And I'll go ahead and kind of peruse this through here. And at the same time, let's go ahead and go to camera 1, tear off the copy, go back to perspective, start moving this towards our actor. So I'll just kind of bring him in like that. So we'll extend this up just a little bit. So there is our dude. So go ahead and call that the actor node, put that in here. So we kind of have a rough idea just by scaling up and down here, the size of the actor and so forth, and all these little pieces. So the next step is to start to orientate the scale as well as the position of camera 1 and camera 2. So let's go ahead and open up our scenes here. So I'll just go ahead and take camera 2 and say display, show selected. So now we have two cameras in here. Let's kind of take a look at them here. And here's our little box. As you can see, the scale of the actor from shot 1 is different from the actor from shot 2. So I think I'll just go ahead and call this actor from shot 1. So we can use these two together to kind of scale things together and to know where they are roughly in world space as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll be again switching out and changing out the pivot point of the group nodes again. So for the camera 1 group, I'm going to hit insert key. I'm going to set the pivot point of the group node to the bottom there of the actor. I'll take the pivot point of the second camera, hit insert, and we'll put that there. So now we're going to get these guys first roughly in the general area of the grid. So I'm going to take this right here, the camera node, and we're going to go ahead and bring that over. So I'll go ahead and make sure I got snap to graph on. And we're snapping everything to graph for the camera 2. Now for the camera 1, we're going to do the same thing. Come in here and make sure we're on snap to graph, like so. And we'll just start scaling either one down. Now, before we even begin to scale this, we have to understand what is the scale with our harvester in the scene and so forth. But honestly, we're going to just keep these two together, and then we're going to scale them together uniformly when all is done by grouping these together. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and do my best to kind of guesstimate, and I'll start shrinking this one down. Again, this is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be very, very close. So I'm going to roughly get it about the size of our 6.5 foot tall actor there. So now they're kind of in the ballpark here. Let's take a look at where the two cameras are at visually. And you can't really see them too well. Reason being is these cameras are so small right now from us kind of working with them and so forth. So let's kind of scale them up a little bit. You can see here's the two cameras. One is super, super tiny compared to the one to the other. They're just scales way off. So if you take the actual camera and scale it up, I'm going to show you what happens here. You scale up the actual physical size. You don't affect the lens or anything. So if I go ahead and put 6, but it actually pushes back your image plane. So you got to see as it did here before. So again, I'm going to put this to something like 12, maybe something a little crazier. I want to be able to see it in the scene pretty proper. So maybe 20. And let's kind of scale that uniformly to that. Okay, so that's not too much. Let's try 15. Maybe 5 is probably enough. Or maybe 6. Okay, so the cameras are roughly the same size now. And if we go ahead and play these through here, you can kind of see where they're going. This camera right here is the tripod shot because it's actually not moving anywhere. So the reality is this shot, if I were to use my up arrow key, this should be more along the lines by rotating it 90 degrees. And I'll make sure I'm doing this in world mode as opposed to local. So kind of eyeball it. So as we can see in our scene, our actor is now looking this way, which is over here, and this is where the actor eventually runs. So right now we have it properly orientated. Here is the dolly shot, or I should say the shot that was on the actual Steadicam that runs forward, as you can see here. And that's where he is. He's hiding out over here, and then eventually he runs in this direction. So there's a point where you got to use your world rotation and actually rotate the synthesized group nodes for each camera to kind of get them roughly orientated in the right direction of where you want them to go and so forth. So far this is looking pretty good, as we can see here. So the next step is for us to build in a little bit of temp geometry before we start to uniformly scale these together to match up with our harvester. Since our harvester is rigged up with weights and all types of rigging, we don't want to take the harvester and scale it down because we'll break the rigging. So instead of scaling our models to fit our camera size, we scale our cameras to fit our models. So that's basically the way it works inside of tracking and so forth. The models have a certain scale we adhere to, and then we just grow the size up of the actual cameras in their groups so that they actually match. Okay, so the first thing I want to double check for is where we are at the beginning of the frame here. So I know that the actor really doesn't move far in this first scene here. He kind of, as you can see here, kind of looks and then takes off a little bit, but not too much. But I want to make sure I'm at frame 1 because I want to do a quick translational movement of my second camera. So here's camera number 2, and I know that just by coming in here, making sure I'm in world view or world mode, I'm going to go ahead and take this and move it up this way because I know by the beginning of the shot he's already run a little bit and he's about this far off. So in reality he's about this far away right here in the next shot, and that's at frame 1. So again, even in this shot right here, we know that the actual actor moves, and if I wanted to, I can actually animate this little cube now. And you can do that while it's in the group node. So while it's in there, I'll just go ahead and jump over to the shot right here. And here is our actor, and this is where we kind of placed him when he looked. But we know that he is currently farther back. So what I'll do is I'll kind of bring up my translational value here, and I'll just roughly make a key right here, actually start to animate this geometry of the motion of the box. And I'm just making sure I'm staying on just a typical translation one direction here. And I don't think I need to animate this whole thing. I'll do it anyway just to show you, what's going on here. But I think what's important is I want to find out where he is at the last frame here. So here he is, the end of the shot. And what he does is he kind of comes out a little bit. He's about right there, roughly. So I'll go ahead and just set a keyframe, and then I'll just go ahead and animate it a little bit more here, like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this animation really quick, just to understand what's going on. By the way, if you're having a problem as far as playing through by scrubbing in your timeline, a couple things we can set up is some display layers. So I'll create a couple display layers, as you can see here, and I'll go ahead and take this image plane, and we'll move that up as shot 1. And we'll take this right here and move it to shot 2. And if you wanted to, you can kind of take them off, turn them off like that, and you kind of see the animation, so to speak. So here's the animation of the actual actor kind of coming through, and his last moments are about right here, roughly. Again, a lot of this is guesswork. But in the industry, I guarantee you, I've worked in a cinematics department at a studio before, and a lot of it is guesswork. Whatever makes the audience happy is what we're looking for. We don't need exact science here. So with that said, I can now take this camera, the first camera, and I can match that up to the first frame of where the actor is at, which is, I believe, right here. Let's go ahead and take a look at our camera 1, and I'll just go ahead and turn on our image plane. So there's our actor. So now everything is pretty much lined out. You don't probably have to do this step unless you really want to get crazy. But what's important because we're going to be laying out some basic geometry for the dump truck that he is behind. And I'm going to use that as a mask. But I want him to be clear of that by the time that he starts running in this direction, as you can see here. So again, I'll go ahead and kind of move back and then jump over to camera 2. And as you can see here, I can't see the image plane. And that's because, again, of the scale itself is so far out there. So there'll be times when you got to come in here and go to your shape node and jump over your clipping plane and make sure that you have a ridiculous near clipping plane 1 and far clipping plane, a million or whatever. So here's like the starting point, and we're good to go. We are going to create an offset here from the frames so that we have a continuous animation from one shot to the other. But I've just roughed out, again, just where everything is at. So again, I'm going to go ahead right now and take this, and we'll just leave it for now. But the next step is to start to bring in and create the rough geometry. This right here, I think I'm going to leave alone, because I'm going to animate that as well, which I might as well do right now. So I'll go to camera 1, camera 2, I should say, and we'll just go ahead and roughly animate this. I like to get a little bit more geekier. I like to create like a little sphere and then a sphere head, just so I know where the head's at. Boxes are probably the most rudimentary way of putting a little stand in. So I'm going to just do basic translation of the actor and just rough it in myself here. So as he kind of goes forward there, I'm just using my world, which is now orientated to the actual object. It's nice to have a dummy character in your shot so that you can kind of just have them there. As far as if you had like a monster, you can know where to animate its head to look down and where your actor is at. Because if you don't have a dummy object in your scene, like for instance these squares, you're not going to know what exactly or where your actor should be looking, or your creature or whatever, if it's got eyes, or if say in this case the harvester wanted to come down with the shovel and like smack the guy. Okay, so there is the animation, as you can see, and they're playing at the same time. And we'll get to the offset in a bit here, but the next step is to create some basic mask geometry specifically for shot number 1.